and welcome back to iPropertyRadio with myself, Carol Tallon. You can contact us on social media at iPropertyRadio or email hello@iPropertyRadio.com. In the Proptech Hot Seat today are the co-founders of Hococo, Katrine Larsen and William Shaw. Katrine and William, you're both very welcome. William, tell us about Hococo.
Yeah, so nice to be here. And Hococo is a residential tenant experience and operations SaaS platform. And we built this for owners and operators, trying to provide them with the tools to improve the net operating income. And we do that mainly by creating these excellent communities and tenant experiences, basically.
Very good. The term tenant experience has been used, it's been used for a number of years now, but I would imagine that has changed over COVID. So tell me about maybe the tenant experience that you thought you might be offering prior to COVID.
Well, basically, I think, we basically found it into COVID, so we've kind of not known any other sort of scenario. But I think what we're seeing is that that residents out there are using the homes in a completely different way. They're seeking a lot more, community, having been isolated, for ages. And I think we try to provide the tools for this new reality, basically. So.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. Katrina, do you come from a technology or a real estate background?
No, actually, none of us do. I have a background in law, so and the way that I came about to enter the real estate industry was actually us having the idea that that the industry was lacking the customer-centric approach that we were seeing in other industries. I came from the insurance company industry and had seen how they were evolving and adopting new technologies to have this customer-centric approach. And then I entered the legal industry with the legal tech solution, also trying to have this customer-centric approach. And then we stopped up, seeing that none of very few was actually interested in having this customer-centric approach in the real estate industry. So we thought that we might be the persons to actually disrupt the market or the industry, and here we are today.
Yeah, it's certainly a laudable ambition. I mean, the real estate industry, it gets a lot of criticism. Sometimes I think it gets a bit of unfair criticism too. And while I accept, that it hasn't been very quick to adopt, particularly to new technologies and things like that, there was always, I think that there was maybe an attempt to put tenants at the center of what they do, but I think maybe the procedures, the regulations, everything was designed against that. So for you, what does a good tenant experience even look like?
For us, it's actually just a basic to start with. In Denmark, we saw that it was hard to get documents. It was hard to get information. You would go to a website that was 10 years old and hadn't been maintained by the landlords or the administrators, and they haven't been putting up new data with new documents about how to handle the washing machine and so on and so on. So we wanted to make this just basic information more transparent and easy to get access to. So by creating this tenant relationship app for the tenants, we could provide them with an easy way to get access to basic information like what is my rent, my deposit, the house rules, the lease, and etc. But also access to who are my neighbors to and the communities within the building, which we hadn't seen before. So we just wanted to display this for the tenants and give them a much more satisfying experience in the buildings that they were living in.
How tenant experience, and to create a good tenant experience, we talk about community, and I think there's a feeling there that community has to happen very organically. But I'm not sure I believe that. I actually think that we can absolutely create the environment for people to engage very well. So, for example, in Ireland, we don't do apartment design, or certainly we didn't do apartment design very well, because most of us came from living in more rural areas. And that when we did move towards apartments, we were always trying to design in privacy into our apartments as opposed to community. And you can really see the impacts of that now, a couple of decades on, that actually we haven't created spaces for communities to come together. How has that changed, and how does it need to change?
I think it's changing quite organically now. We're seeing new terms like build to rent, things like that showing up, where actually you optimize spaces, you create those communal areas, great amenities that bring people together. But I completely agree, and that is the way we see it at Hococo as well. Is basically you can do a lot to actually promote the good communities, and that's what we try to provide as well with our tools. Is give the tools out there so that people can actually involve themselves with the community and talk to the neighbors. And I think, the industry is also changing that direction. Luckily, it's a slow transition, but I think we're seeing more and more of these concepts with the student accommodation, borrowing from hospitality, that this is something that is being asked for from the end user. And I think when you come from other industries, I come from an e-commerce background myself, and you're always looking at the customer journey, the lifetime value, and things like that. And when we started looking into this, it's just not existent, or at least very early on. So I think as also the professionals are starting to become more and more, aware of this, and, also, coming from other industries potentially, I think you start, realizing there's a whole big space out there for potential, basically.
Absolutely. And look, we're saying residential, but residential is quite a broad category there, where it's actually, if you're looking at the built to rent sector, we've seen huge progress there in terms of focus on amenities and community, which is very important, because we're seeing the tenures increase, and we're seeing people stay longer, and people will stay longer in these rented accommodation if there is that sense of community. But I suppose one of the things I'm curious about is, what role does technology have to play? So, for example, are your clients more on the built to rent? Do you have student providers? Who are your clients at the moment?
Well, I think I think it is a very broad segment. I think what we differentiate ourselves is that we have quite a sort of a focused residential. I think a lot of other sort of types of property of being sort of quite mature. If you look at the logistics, they're quite technically advanced these days. If you've ever been to an Amazon warehouse, you know what I mean. But I think for residential, it's still quite underdeveloped. I think build to rent is one of those that are sort of moving things forward, but I do think we'll see it in other types of residential as well. And we have a sweet spot with student accommodation, but we're not isolated only student accommodation. But I think it's where people live and where they spend the time. That's what our interest is, and where we think we can make a difference.
And I'm conscious that your company is a relatively young one. So, were you able to access funding or equity, or how is the business expanded?
Actually, as we started, we were self-funded for the first couple of years. We were bootstrapping, and we were, making our own analysis about the market, the need for a product, and so on. But later on, 2 years ago, we got our first funding from business angels, and last year in November, we actually closed our seed round. So we are very happy.
Oh, well, that's great. Well, so what does that enable you to do? Like, what are your plans for that? Because again, we've seen, and I'm sure you know yourself, that there was a huge run of VC funding for PropTechs that certainly has eased back. And so some commentary, is saying that that's eased back to maybe a more reasonable level, with others. For example, I think it was Matt Knight published a piece saying that PropTech as a sector is officially in recession. I haven't met too many people who agree with that. But having the funding in place, what does that enable you to do in terms of expanding the company?
I think from my perspective, a few different things. One of them is being there on the long run. I think that's been very important for most from the get-go, is to actually realize that real estate won't change overnight. So you need to be there for the long run, and therefore you need to, you know, secure some sort of good capital to actually make that difference. That's one thing, and I think the other thing is also to be more aggressive across different markets. I think it's very important, you know, with international investors to create a concept that works internationally, and to get those feedback loops from the different markets, so that you know that you're not just building something for a very local market. I think a lot of the challenges are global challenges. Of course, there's differences, but I think realizing that and having the funding to back that, I think that's super important.
Tell me, what do tenants want? Because we make a lot of assumptions, and we hear a lot, and certainly before COVID, there was a lot of talk about, you know, rooftop barbecues and lunchtime yoga sessions. But, you know, I think that COVID has really made everybody re-examine, you know, not just how they're living, but also how they're spending their time and where they're spending their time. Do we know what tenants actually want in buildings they're living in?
We've actually made our own surveys, and what we hear from our existing tenants is that they really want these communities. They want to interact with the neighbors. So what we are seeing, if we use the knowledge that we have in a building about the demographic level in the building, we can, you know, accommodate it by making the communities for them. So if we know that there are a lot of families with children in the building, we can, you know, provide them with some tools and some communities for these sectors and segments, so they can get their ultimate, you know, out of the building and from the relationships that they live in. But we also see the need, you know, just to have a serviced apartments also, because we are in a place now where we have food delivered by, you know, trying to I'm just rambling right now.
No,
sorry.
not at all. But no, I think that's a really good point. Like, we've been talking about concierge services across residential, and it's really interesting to see how those change, because, you know, we're taking a more automated approach, but then even with the automated approach, they're not necessarily providing for how quickly the sector is moving on, like to accept drone recovery or deliveries and things like that. So one of the things from what you're describing, is there still a human element that needs to accompany the tools and technology that you have? I mean, is there still a role for, say, a community builder as such, the human touch within developments?
Yes, if I can answer that, I think absolutely, and I think, you know, with COVID, I mean, it's also been shown very apparent that you need to use your homes completely different than you used to. I mean, going into the office is not as common as it used to be, so you need to, you know, be able to facilitate that in your building. So if you can't do that in your small apartment, at least you need some sort of local, you know, amenities that you can use, and that comes with a lot of technology or technological challenges. I mean, how do you ensure that you have a spot where you can work from home? How do you find that convenience that you need? Maybe that when you are working, I mean, you will also like to be, you know, part of something bigger that you used to be or get at an office space potentially. So I think it's all about trying to find the value for money and trying to find buildings that have that technology that enables some of these things.
Yeah, but of course it goes beyond technology. So, for example, we talk a lot on the show about the amenities within build to rent. And so one of the things that we've been talking about, particularly since COVID, is having a work space or station or dedicated work unit outside of the home. So whether that's, you know, a little co-working space as part of the development, you know, and you know, where maybe we were previously offering gyms in the basement or cinema rooms for communal use, are we now looking, like when you talk to your clients, what are they aiming towards? Are they recognizing maybe co-working spaces need to become almost a standard amenity of built to rent?
Yeah, we definitely do. We actually have clients that offer these facilities for the tenants. So and we are seeing the new build apartments or build to rent buildings that are being built right now. They actually facilitate this, and it's an incorporated thing in the plan.
Yeah, and I love that. I love that we are talking about communities, whether it's where they're living or actually accessing co-working space where they live, because actually a huge sense of community is built up when you're going in and out of the office, and that's something that we've missed over the last 2.5 years. So actually we know it's an important thing. We know that even where people do have rooms in their home to work all the time, they actually don't want to be doing that. They do, so even if they can't go into the office, they want to go to a local co-working space, or people are going into coffee shops as they have always done. But so I love that all of our conversation is coming back to community, because I think it's really important. But the term happy and loyal as a community, why is this important to you as a company? Why is this something that you've taken on as one of your driving forces?
Well, I think again, multiple answers to that question, but I think it becomes quite apparent when you have a pandemic and when you have all things going on around the world. I mean that you need something beyond just bricks and mortar, and you need another topic, ESG is on everybody's mouths like that. I think people are becoming more aware of that of doing good, or at least trying to belong and try to find something where you can identify yourselves with similar, like-minded, and try to actually take that sort of role where you take active decision of doing something better. I think yeah, community is a big part of where we're from. I think we both, all of the founders in Hococo have come from other towns, moved into the big city, and found that you move direct into an apartment, and then you don't know anybody you work or living next to. Maybe you've bumped into the neighbor, but I think that comes even more visible when there's a pandemic. And I think we can do a lot with technology. And I back to your point about, do you still not need that human touch? Yes, I think you do. I mean, you still need somebody to drive a community, and to drive technology as well. So I think I mean, we just saw that need ourselves from the tenant perspective, and it's just sort of the community, the missing community is one thing, and another thing is I always say, how is it possible that you can buy a Netflix subscription for, I don't know, $10 or something like that, and the biggest subscription you actually pay for out there is your living expenses, and you just don't get that service, and it's just a big question mark for us, basically.
Well, a question mark, yes, but obviously then an opportunity. So, I mean, what are the plans for Hococo over the next year or two?
We hope to have a great entry in the UK market. We have put a lot of resources to come where we are, and now we are actually equipped to enter the UK market, and we are very exciting to see how it goes.
Well, best of luck with the UK expansion. And again, if you decide to take a look at the Irish marketplace, please do let us know. We'd be happy to show you around. It's always good to see to welcome new ideas, new players into the Irish marketplace. It's something that we're very excited about too. So best of luck to you both and to the team there at Hococo. So my thanks to Katrine Anna Larsen and William Shaw. And that's it from us this week. You can get in touch with the show on social media at iPropertyRadio, or email hello@iPropertyRadio.com. My thanks to producer Breed Malloy and the Hear Me Roar media production team, and to Luke Delaney on sound for Dublin South FM. Until next time, thank you for listening.